Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Continuing with the readings from this volume 3 of the Luang Por Sumedho anthology of teachings. This is from the book The Way It Is, and we're in the middle of the Dhamma talk called Beyond Belief. That's chapter 18 of this book. When you're contemplating reality, begin to reflect on where there is no self. Whenever there is the cessation of self, there are just clarity, knowing, and contentment. You feel at ease and balanced. It takes a while to be able to give up all the striving tendencies and the restless tendencies of the body and mind. But for some moments, they will cease, and then there's a real clarity, contented peacefulness, and also there's no self, no me and my in that. You can contemplate that. These qualities, clarity, knowing, and contentment, they often, when we speak about the mind free of clinging, then or a definition of Dhamma, then Luang Por Cha would use the expression in the Thai language, sawang sa'at, sangop. Sawang means bright or radiant, clear. Sa'at means pure. Sangop means peaceful. So that's an easy sort of alliteration in the Thai language, purity, radiance, and peacefulness. Also, this expression that Luang Por uses here, it brings to mind that the teaching that he often quotes from the Kevada Sutta, and also the invitation to the Brahma Sutta, which is Vinyanang Anidasanang Anantang Sabato Pabang. And it's one of the rare uses of the word consciousness in the Pali Canon, where it's referring to a transcendent quality of knowing, and essentially the qualities of the awake mind, the enlightened mind. So vinyanang in that respect means knowing or awareness. Anidasana means invisible or non-manifest, without form. Anantang in all directions or limitless. Sabato pabang, radiant in all directions, or can also mean accessible from every side. So that when the mind is free of grasping, as he says, when there's no self, when there's a cessation of self, there's clarity, knowing, and contentment. So even though we might think this can sound a little bit complicated or dramatic, it's really just in that moment when the grasping stops, when there's just an inner relaxation, when you know that the mind has been, say in the meditation period, your mind has been chasing after an idea or a memory or attached to a feeling. Maybe you're walking outside and there's a cold wind and, ooh, it's cold. And then there's that recognition, oh, this is just a feeling of coldness, or this is the mind grasping a memory or grasping a plan. There's a noticing of that quality of grasping, and then there's a letting go, there's a relaxation. In that moment of recognition, of say, loosening the grip, it doesn't mean we're making ourselves numb to the cold or suppressing the thought, but there's a relaxation, an easing of the attitude, an easing of the heart. And right there's these qualities of purity, radiance, peacefulness. When the grasping stops, what's present? There's a sense of spaciousness, a quality of simplicity, purity, a brightness of mind, and no sense of self. Of course, the thinking mind, the habits of self-creation can jump in and say, oh, this is real peacefulness. This is the truth of non-grasping. That's what this is. So it jumps in and starts to make a commentary. And then the grasping begins again. But what Luang Por is pointing to here, he says, but for some moments they will cease. And this is, in terms of meditation instruction, this is the kind of thing I say over and over again. Every retreat or meditation class that I teach, I tend to point this out very directly. And many of you have heard me talking about this in, say, morning reflections or giving meditation guidance. Yeah, notice what the feeling of grasping is like. And you can kind of do it deliberately. You can take hold of an object, receiving cloth, and kind of grasp it, and you're holding it tightly. Your arm vibrates. There's a tension in the system. Your chest is shaking. There's a tension, and then not throwing it away, just relaxing the grip. The hand stops vibrating. The body is at ease. Even as I'm talking, there's a very, very different quality of mood. There's a big contrast, and so that recognition of what's grasping like and what is not grasping like. How do they feel? What's their texture? What's their tone? And so much of meditation is, in a way, getting familiar, getting to know that contrast, so that whether you're grasping a memory or a mood or a sensation or something that you taste or smell or touch or see or hear, whether it's sort of internal or external, get to know that feeling of grasping, that agitation that comes with that clinging, and the feeling of I'm doing, I'm feeling, I'm experiencing, I'm going. Know that quality of grasping, and then to train the heart, the mind to relax, to soften the grip, and then, rather than jumping on the next thing to do, notice consciously, fully and completely consciously, what's it like to not grasp? What's what is the quality of the heart, the mind, when the grasping stops? And even if it's only for a second or half a second, notice that. Because right there, when Luang Por Chah was asked to define what is Nibbana, one of the ways he described it was, Nibbana is the reality of non-grasping. And we might think of realizing Nibbana as some kind of ta-da, kind of great, a kind of colourful event with trumpets and flags and a kind of spectacular, kind of colourful, dramatic experience. But rather, it's that quiet normality. It's that quality of peace and naturalness and ease that is present when the grasping stops. So to bring the attention to that, not to create ideas around it or make any claims about it, but just, this is the quality of the heart when there's no grasping. It's like this. And so then those qualities of clarity, knowing, contentment, you know those directly. There is a felt sense, a direct realization of those qualities, so that it's not an idea, it's not a memory, it's a direct knowing, a direct realization. This is the nature of the heart, free of grasping. It's like this. And so that's the way to get to know Nibbana, to get to be familiar with that, to develop the realization of that, simply through knowing that contrast of letting go of grasping, and particularly right at its core, grasping in that sense of I and me and mine. This is me, the owner, me, the being, me, the doer, me and my story, letting go of all those I's and me's and mine's. That's the core grasping. And when that's dropped, then to allow the heart to feel that quality of natural peacefulness and ease, it's always accessible if the grasping stops. So to continue. We must recognize that we have to learn through being totally humbled, by never succeeding at anything that we're doing in this meditation, never being successful, never getting what we want. And if we do get what we want, we lose it right away. We have to be totally humbled to the point where any form of self-view is relinquished willingly, graciously, humbly. That's why the more that meditation comes from willpower, based on a self-view and on me achieving and attaining, the more you can expect only failure and despair, because this is not a worldly pursuit. In worldly situations, if you're clever and strong, gifted and have opportunities, and if the conditions are there, you can barge your way through and become a great success. The survival of the fittest means you can manage to get on top and destroy the competition. You can be a winner. But on the worldly plane, even a winner is still going to be a failure, because if you win something, you're going to lose something too. Winning and losing go together. So, winning is never as wonderful as it might look. It's the anticipation of winning. If you've actually won something, so what? You have a moment of elation, maybe, I'm a winner. But then it's, now what do I do? What do I have to win next? Winning, worldly goals and worldly values are not really going to satisfy us. So if we apply that same attitude towards the religious life, it's clearly not going to work. We will just feel a sense of total despair, helplessness. And we need that. We need to lose everything, to let go of everything, all hope, all expectations, all demands, to be able just to be with the way things are, and not expect or demand them to be otherwise. This is a very interesting theme, I feel, that Luang Por is presenting here. So we must recognize that we have to learn through being totally humbled. And by the way, being humbled is not the same as being humiliated. So being humbled is a letting go of self. When you're humiliated, you've had your self feeling is insulted or attacked and made painful. But to be humble is a letting go of conceit and pride and inflatedness. So I think this is really interesting and helpful advice. We have to be totally humbled by never succeeding at anything that we're doing. In this meditation, never being successful, never getting what we want. And if we do get what we want, we lose it right away. So for some of you, that might be really depressing. What about the 4 bases of success, Ajahn? But what Luang Por is pointing to here is that any kind of success, and as he talks about later in the same passage, any kind of success is only conditional. It's something that is, say, there's a quality of satisfaction, and yes, there's an aspect of completing to it, but that can't be anything that's permanently and absolutely satisfying. Sabbe sankhara dukkha, all conditioned things are necessarily unsatisfactory. So that as he says, never succeeding at anything that we're doing. So it's a way of keeping a perspective on when you sit down in meditation, your mind goes really still and quiet, you feel bright and at peace and totally undistracted, and you go, oh wow, my practice has really come together. At last I'm succeeding, I'm getting somewhere. And that's called setting yourself up for suffering. But, we're really asking for it. As soon as we grasp hold of a particular experience like that, as he was saying in an earlier talk, then you can spend weeks or months, years trying to get back to that beautiful, peaceful, bright state that we had on that occasion. And as he's talking here about winning and losing, attaching to winning, I remember years ago when I was a novice in Thailand, one of the monks there, Kittisaro, who was a monk in his community for a long time, he was an abbot of Devon Vihara for a time, disrobed a number of years ago, but when he was a layman and a student, he was a champion wrestler in the sort of classical, not kind of so professional wrestling, but the sort of a university team, classical wrestling, and he was the Eastern States champion of the USA for his weight for 2 years, And I remember him telling the story of how when winning this competition, you're going through all the local rounds, and then the district rounds, and then the state rounds, and the whole eastern states of the USA, and many of these fights, competitions, and having this really keen and ardent attitude, always wanting to win, and then finally, he won this really important bout, and he became the champion of the eastern states. And he said it was this incredible thrill. It's like so happy. Yes, I made it. I did it. And then, as he's sort of up on the stage getting his medal and the award for winning the competition, there's this row of guys sitting down in the front seat saying, "Next year." Just you wait, next year. And he said, there's this kind of shock of all these people saying, I'm going to get you next time. Yeah. And he said, so the thrill of winning after all that preparation and all those fights, the thrill of being the champion, he said it was about 10 minutes. And then there was the anxiety of having to do it again, and who he was going to have to meet, and all the training he'd have to do, and so that really stuck in my mind. That that's what it's like. You can really invest a lot in that, and on a much smaller scale. When I was at school, at high school, I was, even though I got short, thick legs, I was very good at hurdling. I was a hurdler. I've got very flexible hips that I inherited from my mother. Thank you very much, Mum. So I was, usually hurdlers have got sort of long, thin legs and they're fast sprinters. I wasn't a particularly fast sprinter, but I was very quick over the hurdles. So I became the county champion for a couple of years at the under 13 and the under 15 age hurdles, 80-meter hurdles and the 100-meter hurdles. So I was the Kent county champion, and so you got this big kind of banner that you could put on the back of your tracksuit saying Kent. So and there was only one or two other guys in the school who were also runners for Kent. So we kind of really, oh, you're looking at my tracksuit, are you? Oh yes, And so it was really a big deal. So then when I went to the national championships, so if you run for the county, you join the county team, then you qualify to go to the nationals. So I was pretty pleased with myself as the county champion. I go along to this national athletics competition. And running in my first heat, the first round of the competition, I was completely wiped out. I came in like a second to last. Just in the first round, it's like in no way did I get anywhere near to the finals, and so there I was, a sort of very proud county champion, but I was absolutely nowhere in the field, completely behind almost everybody else in the national standard. So my joy at being the champion was very, very limited. And as Luang Por puts it here, you can be a winner, but on the worldly plane, a winner is still going to be a failure. So that it was kind of fun to be there at the competition, but it was definitely humbling to be left in the dust, as it were, behind all the other much faster runners. And I feel this is one of the themes I talk about a lot, because our societies, particularly in the West, but really all around the world these days, is very much focused upon winning and succeeding as an absolute good, and failing or losing as an absolute bad. And so if you win, if you're a success, if you get the most money or you get the most fame, that's taken as an absolutely good thing. And then failure and loss is a disaster. It's terrible. And our culture inflates that to a huge degree. So one of the themes I talk about in exactly as Luang Por does here is how we don't have to invest in success and failure in that way. That we can do the best that we can with, say, the projects that we have. Working in the kitchen, you do encourage all the people cooking to do the best you can with the food preparation. Organizing the transport, arranging the schedules, and practicing meditation. We do the best that we can, but we can work and we can make effort without that being based upon self-view, without that being an ego trip. And so if we work and we apply the four bases of success, not with me wanting to be the best or me fearing being the worst, and building the relationship to what we do, the work that we do, the efforts that we make, not building that around self-view, but rather just setting a different framework and making your best effort, doing the best you can, but having the main intention to learn from what happens, to let it be an instructive process rather than an ego trip. And so that we still do the best we can with meditating or preparing food or organizing things. But when there is a success, things come out in an agreeable fashion, rather than yes, I succeeded, I'm the best. Instead, we hold it as, well, that worked well. Okay, duly noted. Let's learn from that and be informed by that, and let's see what happens next time. Similarly, if things go badly, you have a disharmonious and unfortunate result, you're organising the transport and you send the vehicle to the wrong town, or you forget to make sure the tyre pressures are correct and the vehicle breaks down halfway, it was your responsibility, then similarly, rather than thinking, oh, I'm a failure, I'm so terrible, what do they think of me, I'm such an idiot, how could I have done that? Think, okay, duly noted. Next time, make sure that the tyre pressures have been checked. Make sure that you know that they're going to Hartford, not Harpenden. Just because it begins with H, it doesn't mean it's the correct town. Double check, and then you'll get things right next time. So the whole relationship to succeeding and failing is very, very different. And as I was mentioning a few days ago, it's an interesting exercise to take your own memories, to think back 5 or 10 years, and to consider something that you were really happy about. You got a promotion at work, or you moved into a new house, or you joined up with a new partner, or you joined a new monastery. You thought, yes, great, at last, fantastic, I'm so happy. And then 5 or 10 years later, you look back and you go, oh, I can't believe I was celebrating. I was so overjoyed. I thought that was the best thing that happened to me. What an idiot! How could I have assumed that that was going to be pleasant in every respect? And then we look at something that was we thought was a failure or a disaster. We get fired from a job, or a relation breaks up, or you find yourself having a difficult relationship with an Ajahn in a monastery, and it's difficult, it's painful, it's just what you don't want. And then 5 or 10 years later, you look back and go, well, it was really challenging at the time, but actually that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm really glad that illness was really instructive, or that failing, getting kicked out of that job, that was a start of a lot of blessings. So I say this kind of thing over and over, and I really encourage us to take a close look at our own lives, our own stories, and to see how it works. And so when you look at it that way, you really take that to heart, you can see, right, so what does that say about success and failure? So when you're in the middle of some kind of crisis or a disaster, it's exactly what you didn't want to happen. And then the mind can get really upset. Oh, this is so awful. How can I get away from this? This is terrible. I'm going to get criticized. Or how could I have been so stupid? So, okay, now let's think. Let's contemplate this. So, okay, this is really painful, but what can we learn from this? Rather than just dwelling on the fact that this is a loss or a failure or what I didn't want, do we have to see this as a disaster or a crisis? What can we learn from this? So the mind holds it in a different way. Similarly, when things go well, rather than getting carried away with things being the way you wanted, and say being praised for it, or things being exactly as you had hoped for. So, okay, well, this is very sweet. This is what it tastes like to get what you want. Okay, now what can we learn from this? Let's not get drunk on this. Let's not get carried away. And so if you use your contemplative abilities to investigate, to look, to explore these patterns in our life, then it really changes the way that we relate to success and failure, so that then we can see that any success and any failure can only be part of the story. It can't be the whole picture. And if we make the intention to learn from what happens, rather than trying to grasp hold of the pleasures and the successes and to reject and fear the failures and the losses, then nothing can go wrong. Really, even if you get a horrible disease or an injury, that you really wouldn't want, then you don't have to see that in terms of something going wrong, but rather it's something that we learn from, that we can put to good use in our lives. So any thoughts, questions, reflections? If you could use the microphone, Venerable.
Yeah, I wonder, Ajahn, if you could give some advice about how to skillfully have a conversation with someone where you know beforehand that you care about the subject, and the person you're talking with has got the polar opposite view to yourself. So just some general advice about how to still engage, but in a way where you don't walk away feeling terrible.
A good question. These kind of things come up regularly in community life. So, well, there's a few things. Firstly, if you're going into a conversation with someone that you know that you have very different points of view, in terms of preparation, the best thing is not to create them as a person, not to be rehearsing your script. But when he says this, then I'm going to say that. And when she says this, then I'm going to respond this way. Because people never follow those plans. But to not do your best not to create the other person, or to typecast them in the role of that person. They think X, Y, Z, because there's more to all of us than the opinions that we happen to favor. So that if you don't create them as a person, you don't sort of label them in terms of the particular opinions or that particular subject, then when you meet, then you're much more able to attune to the whole person, to attune to the whole situation. What mood is there within you? What mood is there within them? So where you're meeting the whole situation, not just their opinion, so that you're broadening the view. As you're engaging, then it's most helpful to be listening rather than preparing your response. Because oftentimes, particularly where they're sort of emotionally charged, and you're trying to make your point, or you're trying to convince the other person that they're wrong and you're right, we don't hear each other. You're just waiting for a gap in their flow so you can carry on with your piece. I mean, not you personally, but you plural, that's what we do. And so you don't have a conversation, let alone a communication, but you're having like two monologues that are sort of crossing, like ships passing in the night. And so there isn't really a communication because you're not really listening. So trusting in the fact that you know your subject, then it's most helpful to do what you can to listen to the other person. And not just listening to the words that they're saying, but listening to where they're coming from, to really appreciate the whole being, as it were, rather than just the content of the words. Also, it can be helpful to acknowledge that we see things very differently, and that also that you can love and respect someone and have totally different opinions. Sometimes what causes a lot of division is that if someone has the attitude, if you loved me and respected me, you would think the way that I do. And if you don't think the way that I do, you don't love me, you don't respect me. And so for myself, I found over the years, it's really helpful to be clear as you can within your own heart, in your own citta. It's like, yes, I love you, yes, I respect you, and I think completely differently. I see things in it, and that even if someone is holding that, no, that you, because you disagree with me, therefore you hate me, or you reject me. That even if they might even say those very words, to be clear in yourself, saying, no, I respect you, I have loving kindness for you, compassion, and I don't agree with what you're saying. I see it very differently. And the more that we can have confidence in that, like trusting our own say, attitude, and seeing that those are different things. You can love someone completely and say, I don't hate you, I'm not afraid of you, I respect you, but no, I'm not going to get out of the way. I can't agree with you. And then that kind of genuine respect, that will communicate itself. Even if at the surface level, they say, well, you're talking nonsense and you're just saying that, I know you hate me. It's like, well, okay, you're entirely at liberty to feel that way or think that way, but in my heart, that's not there. And so if that is sincere, then even if your words get sort of rejected at the surface level or in the middle of the conversation, what the other person will take away is also, even if they don't want to know it, something in them will realize, actually, yeah, he really does care. He is really respectful. He is, and that kind of, I would say that's a real communication or communion, really, that you have communed. That sense of respect is going to find its way through. Maybe not consciously, but that does communicate itself. And a part of that, maybe the last thing to say, is about body awareness and body language. So that if you're being respectful, but I'm talking very respectfully, and you're kind of wound up like a tight spring, your words might be very respectful, but the kind of emanations from your body language and your own kind of lack of awareness of what your body is doing is going to contribute to division and not help the conversation along. So developing body awareness, just seeing how you're holding the body, and to be as relaxed and open physically as you can. And then again, that physical attitude, that physical posture, informs the mental attitude, and so that you're not being physically defensive, kind of tightened up and armored, but rather that the signals that you're putting out just on a physical level for the other person, but also for yourself, the sense of, okay, keep breathing. Just no need to be uptight, just relax, be open, breathe easily. Then that's beneficial for your attitude, and also that helps the other person to relax as well. And also, maybe the last thing to say is, don't let your happiness depend on coming to an agreement. You can peacefully and respectfully agree to disagree. The world is not diminished by having different opinions within it. It's just, okay, we see things different ways. Okay. So any other questions, thoughts? Okay, to continue. The practice of the Buddha is to accept life as it is. This is the way it is. Our reflection as mendicants is that we have enough to eat, robes to wear, a roof over our heads, and medicine for illness. The Dhamma and Vinaya are taught. That's good enough. So we begin to say, it's all right, I'm content, and not make problems or dwell on the irritations and frustrations that we find here. I find myself much more at ease now with letting life be as it is here in Amaravati, and with the way things are, with the weather, the people, the country. Not comparing, not judging, but being grateful for the opportunity and accepting of whatever is. And it isn't all that easy, believe me, because I can be quite critical too, and fussy. There's also a strong sense of responsibility in wanting to make things right and to work properly. Not just wanting nice things for myself, but wanting to make everything right and good for everyone else. I can be really caught up with responsibility. Being an Ajahn and an abbot and all that, you try to set a good example. You become obsessed with it. I always felt I had to be a kind of cardboard monk, a plastic Sumedho bhikkhu. If you saw anything other than my perfect smile and stereotyped presence, you'd lose all faith in the Dhamma. But we begin to let go of that, even the altruistic tendencies of feeling responsible. It doesn't mean one is irresponsible, but one is letting go of those ideas, those views that can so blind us. They might be very good views, but if you grasp them, you can't get beyond them. In living the holy life, you train yourself to be open and willing to learn from the ups and downs and the way things happen to be, the irritations and problems of community life and the way things are, rather than resisting, avoiding, and rejecting life. You give up controlling and manipulating and trying to change the world and make it into what you want it to be. One has to give up, let go of that kind of inclination, and abide in the knowing, in mindfulness. So that's trying to be the perfect monk, perfect nun, perfect anagarika, perfect lay member of the lay support team, long-term lay resident. Trying to be the perfect person is a lot of suffering. There's good intention, there's sincerity, but like Luang Por's saying here, you can become obsessed with it. As he said, I always felt I had to be a kind of cardboard monk, a plastic Sumedho bhikkhu. If you saw anything other than my perfect smile, stereotyped presence, you'd lose all faith in the Dhamma. So feeling you've got to perform this role and to be this thing to make everybody happy or to fulfill your duties, then it's a lot of suffering. And so, as he said, it's not about being irresponsible or not caring, but letting go of self-view or the attachment to a particular way that you feel you have to be. And it's the kind of say the habit of mind saying, you should be this, a good monk is like that, a good nun is like that, you should be this way, you shouldn't be that way. And it's where our sincerity, our good-heartedness, and our faith in Dhamma gets co-opted taken over, kind of hijacked by self-view, and it becomes this thing that I have to be. And so that all that good-heartedness, that sincere, wholesome intention, then it's very sad because it gets sort of taken over, and it becomes very productive of suffering. So I suffered a lot for myself for many years trying to be the perfect monk. And I've frequently told the story of when I realized how much anxiety and tension I was creating trying to be perfect for everyone all the time. It was really exhausting and stressful. And when I deliberately started to let go of that and stopped trying to be the perfect monk who was always available for everybody at all times and volunteering for everything, and the first to arrive at the workplace and the last to finish, and especially on the washing up, I would race from my bowl washing to the tubs, get to the washing up sink first of all, and be there at the end, kind of scrubbing the rubbish bins and cleaning the taps and everything. That I decided this was too much, and I was very identified with trying to get everything right and be perfect all the time. So I made a distinct effort, a deliberate effort to just let go of that, to drop that, and to not try and be this thing, and just to function in a more sort of natural and less obsessive and less self-obsessed, self-focused way. And the comment that really hit me during that time was where one of my brother monks said to me, "You're much easier to live with since you stopped trying to be perfect." So, as I've often said, I didn't know whether to be encouraged or insulted when he said that, but it really sunk in. It was about nearly 30 years ago he said that. So I still remember it very, very strongly. But it was an important insight. Like, you're much easier to live with when you stop trying to be perfect. So trying to be this perfect thing, it's stressful for yourself. It's also irritating and hard work for the people that you're living with. So I'm not encouraging people to be lazy or irresponsible, but just to see how much that self-view can come into I should, I must, what do they think of me? They expect this of me, I have to. And that kind of the sort of superego wagging the finger, the perfect nun should be like this, the perfect anagarika, perfect anagarika, a good layperson should. And to hear that, to listen to that, to listen, to really receive it and allow that into the heart and say, well, okay, let's just notice that, be aware of that, and not be dominated by it, not build our life around that. But as Luang Por Sumedho says here, that it's letting life be as it is. Again, that's not being passive, but it's just not building our life around self-view and how I should be, how I think people expect me to be, but attuning to each moment, the time, the place, the situation, who you're with, what needs to be done. If there's something to do, then you can join in and do it. If there's nothing to do, then you can leave it alone and not be creating all that shoulding in the mind. One of the aspects of this is just, in a way, is kind of related to, as he says here, not manipulating time. You give up controlling, manipulating, and trying to change the world to make it into what you want. So there's ways that we can manipulate and maneuver, trying to fix things so that they go the way that we like, and again, there can be a lot of suffering in that, or trying to control things. And all of you who live here at Amaravati probably have found out that if you're a control freak, that's a direct path to suffering. If you try to control the living situation or the people around you, there's so many different factors at play. It's impossible to be in control. Again, it doesn't mean that we don't care, but recognizing if you're trying to maneuver or get things to be the way you want, I think it's got to be this way, and then as soon as it goes a little bit away from what you want, then it shouldn't be this way, it should be that way. Why don't they listen to what I'm saying? I told them it should be like this, it shouldn't be like that. To have a quality of adaptability and to be ready to say, okay, well, I wanted it to be that way, and we kind of agreed it was going to be that way, but it's gone over that way. Well, okay, well, I guess that's okay too. We can live with that. Again, not being crazy or irresponsible or destructive, but I remember many years ago when Luang Por Ajahn spent a year here as one of Luang Por Chah's senior disciples, and he'd never been outside of Thailand in his life, and coming to the West was a really extraordinary experience for him. He was very much a sort of a northeast Thai village lad and had a very unsophisticated background. And coming to the West and being around the sort of Western cities and all the Westerners living here at Amaravati, there was a lot of things that were very, very new and strange to him. And one of the phrases that he used over and over again was "di mungan," which means "that's good too." And so when he was confronted with different ways of traveling, going on the tube train, or different kinds of robes, or needing to have a warm wrap, or wearing a jacket, or different kinds of shoes, all kinds of things, that we wanted to try and set things up so that he was comfortable and things were appropriate. But there was a lot of times that he had to be introduced to doing things in a very, very different way, or things that were unfamiliar. And it was really striking how often he would just say, "Yeah, di mungan, yeah, that's good too." So I didn't think of doing it that way, but well, okay, well, I guess that's good too. You can do it like that, can't you? And it was a really, really good example of that adaptability. I mean, and I think in many senses way outside of his comfort zone. But he was so, oh really? Oh, okay. But Di Mungan would be his response. So okay, well you can do it that way as well, and that sense of not being feeling that we have to control things or have things go in a certain way, that adaptability, that that readiness to attune to the time, the place, the situation. As when we talk about sati sampajanya or mindfulness and full awareness, or what Luang Por Sumedho would call intuitive awareness, it's really that adaptability, opening the heart, the mind to the time, the situation, who you're with. Is it time to be quiet? Is it time to crack a joke? Is it time to move forward? Is it time to be still? You know, what's appropriate? What's going to work? And so that we are making choices. We're say looking after our responsibilities. We're working together with each other, but. And so we see, okay, this looks like a good way forward. This looks like the best way to take care of this job, this activity. But if someone comes along and says, "Well, why don't we do it like this?" or "I've just done it like that," to be able to say, "Oh, okay, well, I didn't think of doing it that way, but I guess that's good too." Okay, well, why? Just because I didn't think of it, does that make it wrong or bad? Or, oh, okay, and that kind of inner adaptability is, I would say, is a great resource that we have. It's a real path to peace. It doesn't mean being kind of completely wishy-washy or just blown around by the winds, but it's that readiness to see things from a broader perspective and not just be fixed on one attitude, one opinion, one way of doing things, one point of view. And so that it's a real capacity that we have. We forget that we have it. We forget that we are, I think I was saying yesterday, that we have a lot more options that open before us than we often realize. There's a lot more choices available that we don't notice because we can get very fixed. It's got to be done this way. I've decided I'm supposed to be like this. I shouldn't be like that. It's got to be done like this. And when we take a step back and just look at the bigger picture, then we can see there's all sorts of other pathways, other solutions to different to problems that we can deal with them in different ways. So it's I say a very important part of ending suffering is that that adaptability and that sampajanya, seeing the whole picture. In practice, just notice if you're trying too hard. If you have the view that you must stay awake, that can make you compulsive, the "I have to stay awake" compulsion. Notice if you attach to either extreme, like "I have to stay awake" or "it doesn't matter." You can use one to counterbalance the other. If you tend to think "it doesn't matter," you need to practice "I must stay awake." But if you're caught in the "I must stay awake" compulsion, then you can say, "It doesn't matter, let go." Neither one is a fixed position. They're just skillful means to find the middle, the place of balance. You don't come here and say, "It doesn't matter, let go, that's my practice," and then fall over asleep because it doesn't matter. It's all Dhamma, sleeping Buddha, awake Buddha. Or there's the compulsive, "I don't want to fall asleep. It matters so much to stay awake. Ajahn Amaro says, you come here to be awake, not to fall asleep." So then one can become caught in the compulsion to be awake. The knowing here is the knowing of what's driving us, what we're attached to, where that attachment is. And it does take patience to see it and to acknowledge it. So it's kind of following up on that same theme and not having a fixed position. And so if your attitude is one of being casual and lazy, then it's to find the point of balance, we need to tighten up. If we're already pretty tight and tense, then we need to loosen. And it can be something that varies during the course of a day or the course of a week. course of a meditation period. You can go in different directions. But it's just like the advice that the Buddha gave to Venerable Sona Kolivisa, who was he'd been a musician before he was a monk, and he was getting so diligent with his walking meditation that his feet had become carved up and had all kinds of cuts and lesions in his feet. There's blood all over his walking meditation path. And so some of the monks told the Buddha, Sona's really, he's really ardent, but he's injured his feet and he's still walking up and down. There's blood all over his walking path. I think could you go and talk to him, Venerable Sir? So then the Buddha made his way around the monastery and went to visit Venerable Sona and saw all the blood all over his walking path. And so he said to him, Sona, before you were a monk, you were a musician, is that right? He said, yes, I used to play the veena, like a sitar, a kind of classical Indian sitar. He said, and if the strings on your veena were too loose, what was the sound like? Oh, the sound would be really flat. And if the strings on your veena were too tight, what would it be like? Oh, then the sound would be too sharp. And he said, and what would it be like if the strings were tuned in a harmonious way? So, well, then the sound would neither be sharp nor flat. It would be melodious. It would be harmonious. And so, if the strings are tuned to an even tension and they're in accord with each other, then the musical instrument makes a very beautiful sound. And the Buddha said, well, exactly, you're wound a bit tight here, Sona. your meditation strings are too tight, and so you've got out of balance, and so you need to relax your efforts a little bit, because you're damaging yourself in exerting yourself to this extent and harming your own body. So that kind of, again, it's a sort of sati sampajanya, mindfulness and full awareness. If we're too tight, then lighten up. If we're too slack, then we need to tighten up. One of the supports for enlightenment is devotion, a kind of emotional sweetness and joyfulness. We tend to want everything on the level of intellectual concepts, but we also need to humble ourselves to the joy and sweetness of loving the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, especially if we find our practice is getting a bit dried up. This is to advise you not to be frightened of loving and joy and open-hearted generosity. Human life without this is a dreary desert, just like living in some antiquarian museum. It's all nice and clean with marble corridors, but cold, ordered and catalogued. In museums, everything is dusted and put in order, but it's cold. Religion also gives us this opportunity for warmth, joy, love, devotion, offering, giving. They are very much a foundation and a necessity for religious life. See our life here in the community as an opportunity to manifest generosity, love and joy. Not just as an obsession with looking at our citta to see what is moving through it at this moment, seeing that it's anicca, dukkha, anatta. We do that in order to reflect on the way things are, to be free from illusions or attachments to love and generosity. Because if you attach to concepts of love and generosity, that will also bring you to despair. For this retreat, the lay people have come to give, to help our Sangha community. This is their act of love and generosity, and our appreciation for that act of generosity is our determination to practice, to realize the Dhamma, so that our lives will bless the lay community in a skillful and wholesome relationship. We can reflect on it in this way, not to take the situation for granted in any way whatsoever, but to allow space for the joy and the gratitude that we feel. These qualities help provide the foundation for our own understanding of freedom from delusion. So that's a little point that Luang Por makes at the end of the talk there, and to I think very significant. During this time, we haven't been doing much in the way of chanting. The sort of devotional side of our lives is sort of down at the sort of 3%, 3% of usual level because of the coronavirus protocols and the way that if we chant a lot, then lots of droplets are entering into the atmosphere and can be endangering in various ways. So we're not doing very much chanting or devotional practice these days, but still those qualities of appreciation and gratitude and the sense of giving and helping and offering to each other, that is not at 3%. We can keep those going at full scale. We don't have to be chanting in order to be expressing those qualities. And the point I think that Luang Por is making here that's helpful to bear in mind is we can get really sort of hyper involved, really sort of dug in deep with working with our minds and our practice and our feelings and getting really sort of dead serious and super involved with our own mind and forget that we're surrounded by 60 or 70 other good-hearted people who are here to help us or are keeping us company or all have the same kind of aspirations and intentions that we do. So it's that kind of experience of looking up from the sort of close focus on our own mind, our own feelings and our own inner world, and taking a moment to cultivate those qualities of gratitude, the people who are helping in the kitchen every day and doing all the dishes and helping to keep the place clean and tidy and to help all the functions of running Amaravati to operate in a good way, to be say taking care of all those practical duties, and also within the monastic community, your fellow samanas, the other nuns and monks, anagarikas, anagarikas, to be say cultivating that sense of appreciation that. As Luang Por Sumedho said in another talk, we tend to see each other as personalities. That this nun, that monk, and we, if we notice each other, we kind of just see each other in a very superficial way. But he said we can also see each other as fields of merit, as a punya keta. That we don't have to see each other in terms of personality or name or gender or role, but to see each other as a field of blessings. That we don't have to just go along with our habitual perceptions. And I remember when Luang Por said that, he said, we don't have to see each other as say Ajahn Sujito or Ajahn Sundara or Ajahn Pabakara or this monk, that nun, but we can see, there are all these fields of merit, all these punya keta we're surrounded by, these fields of merit, these beings who aspire to enlightenment, these beings who take refuge in the Triple Gem. And we can put the personality and the age and the gender and the name and the story, put that aside, and here we're surrounded by these fields of merit, these zones of wholesomeness, centers of wholesomeness that have the same aspiration and the same commitment that we do. And I remember when he said that, for the first time I heard him say that in a Dhamma talk, there was this sort of kind of a communal intake of breath. Like, oh, what an interesting thought. That's a different way of seeing each other, rather than focusing on personalities and individual stories and backgrounds and relationships, but all these blobs of devotion to the Triple Gem. Blob 1, Blob 3, Blob 5, Blob 8, Blob 9. And that these centers of wholesomeness, centers of goodness and nobility. And this changes the way we see each other. And so that, of course, as he points out, we can be attached to love and generosity and so forth. But it is a very helpful counterpoint to, say, if we get very so over-focused on our inner practice, like Sona getting over-focused on his walking path, to take a step back and to broaden the perspective and to train ourselves to see each other in that way, and to see how we can serve each other, how we can practice generosity in relationship to each other, how we can cultivate genuine metta karuna, love and compassion for each other. finish there for today.